Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Speedwork. This is our ongoing micro video series with a whole bunch of tips and tricks brought to you by my co-host Dylan Wykes from Mile to Marathon and me, Ian Fraser from Tamarack Ottawa Race Weekend and Scotiabank Ottawa Marathon. I think this is the fourth, Dylan, in our series so far.
Number 4.
Right.
Great.
Okay. Good. And you know, last time we talked about long run recovery, nutrition, and sort of physical care. Before that, we were talking about what you needed to probably take on in terms of calories and nutrition on your long run. And I think our first segment, we were talking a little bit about speed work, right?
Correct.
And I kind of want to round this out today because this is, I know, an interesting conversation depending on who you talk to. And we want to talk about how long should my long run be, right? So you're getting down to the end of your training plan. Your event is 2, 3, 4 weeks away. How long should that long run be? And when in that sort of training phase should that happen if you're thinking about doing the half and the full? So talk to me a little bit about half marathon first.
Cool. Yeah. So with the half marathon, you do have the freedom, I think, to run up to or beyond race distance. And the reason for that is because you can recover from a run of that length. If you've built up to it in your training and, you know, you're going to peak on your, about 2 or 3 weeks out from race day in terms of your long run, both in terms of the distance and the intensity of it. So you're building up to 21K and you can probably go as long as 24 or 25K. You don't need to go longer than that. Even if you feel you're prepared to go farther, you don't need to go farther than that. But there's something about being able to, you know, cover that distance in training at a slower pace than you'll cover it on race day. But just even the psychological benefits of being able to know that you can cover the distance. And you should, if it's part of a good, well-rounded training plan, you're going to be able to recover from that long run because you've built up to it gradually.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I think for a half, that seems really reasonable. Now let's talk about getting into those sort of uncharted or longer territory. So that thinking, I'm going to assume, doesn't apply to the marathon. I think there's a different set of things that you need to consider there, right?
Yeah, most certainly. And so the big thing when we get to the marathon training and the long run in the marathon is your recovery. I don't know many athletes that can recover from doing a 42K run, no matter what the pace they go at in training, and be able to hold together without injury for the remainder of a training cycle. So what I actually like to do when I'm training people for the marathon is switch the metric and switch to minutes. And in most cases, we can tell people that they can do their long run up to the same duration of their goal for the marathon in terms of the duration of it. So if your goal is to run 3:45 for the marathon, you would peak out at about that duration of a long run about 3 weeks out from your marathon. And, you know, running not at race pace for that run, because that will be, you know, really hard to recover from, essentially just running your race. So making sure that you're going easier, but that's usually what I tell people for the marathon.
And that makes sense. And I'm glad you mentioned sort of the 3 weeks out as that kind of magic spot for that last long run. What about on the half? Still about the same, about 3 weeks out from race day?
Yeah, you can push it a bit closer. 2 weeks out is okay on the half. It's probably less of your overall volume when you're in the half, so you're going to be able to recover more quickly. But certainly with the marathon, you're going to need a longer taper, which is when you reduce both your volume and intensity in the marathon. So you've got to push that last peak long run out a little farther in the training.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I think that seems to resonate a little more, I think, with people who are probably trying their first marathon. It can be a little bit daunting to have to think that you would have to go out and run 42.2K, understanding that you don't have to do that. I also understand sort of the other flip side of that. There's the psychology around that. And I used to get asked that a lot. It would just be, well, I've never run 42.2 before, so should I not be running that prior to race day? And my answer was always, well, no, you don't need to do that. I like the idea of being out there roughly for the time that you expect that you're going to take to finish. And you can trust the training you've done, and you can trust the fact that you're going to be able to get those 42.2K in, and you're going to be able to do that on the strength of all the great work you've done leading up to that, right?
Yeah, and you have to, exactly, understand that race day is special, and you're going to be able to tap into all the training and something a little extra with the boost adrenaline and whatnot on race day to be able to really power yourself through.
Especially when we're back to in-person events, that becomes a little bit easier to ride the wave of that crowd. But also in the virtual world, you set your own parameters around that, right? So you set your course, you set when you're going to do it. So in some cases, in the virtual side, you have more control over choosing when you're going to run. You don't have a choice when you sign up for Tamarack Ottawa race weekend. You have to show up when the race starts, right? And maybe you're not a morning person. Maybe you prefer to run later in the day. So at least in the virtual world, you've got a little more control over that. And in all seriousness, that gives you just a little more time to make sure your routine is really solid and that everything is working in your favor. So I guess there's that to consider too, right?
Oh yeah, there's lots of positives to it. You can practice your own route too. You can make your own route and practice your own route on your long runs, which is nice if you don't like or want to mix it up from the typical Ottawa race weekend marathon distance or course.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, listen, thanks again for joining me. I think this has been really great. So this is my co-host, Dylan Wykes. We are going through our little series called Speedwork. We're going to hit a whole bunch of these little micro video sections where we hope to impart some wisdom and make your Tamarack Ottawa race weekend and Scotiabank Ottawa marathon experience the best that it can be. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.